Good evening. This is the Sunday, October 25th online meeting of the Natural Right Sangha. I'm Mark, and right now I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Today I spent a very interesting day touring the Gettysburg battlefield, which is about 40 miles southeast of here. And in that battle, about 170,000 Americans, Confederate and Union, fought, and over 50,000 of them died in 3 days. Now, what would bring young men, mostly between the ages of 16 to 30, to fight to such a horrible extent that 50,000 of them would die in a 3 day period? Is a very interesting thing. And of course, the issue of slavery was a big thing there, but in any battle like that, there's more going on. So that's been my day on this Saturday when I'm recording this online meeting. But that's not so important. It's just interest what's been happening for me. And let's begin as usual with meditation. Please set your timer. Please set it to however many minutes you wish to meditate for. We do mindfulness meditations. We breathe through the nose and focus on that. And we try to let thoughts go. We endeavor our best to let thoughts go, just like we endeavor our best to uphold our precepts. So, set your timers, and when they go off, and when you start them, please stop this. And when they go off again, please start it back up. Okay, let's begin. Oh, welcome back. Certainly, meditation of any length is not a bad thing. And we talked about doings last week in prakriya. So, no more to this week. It seemed to be clear. I didn't get any questions about it. Of course, if you ever do have questions, please do contact me at mark@naturalrightsangha.org, or comments or things you'd like to hear about or whatever. Now, last week, I promised you some things about Tennyson. And Tennyson as seen by Swami Atmananda Krishna Menon, as reported by Ananda Wood. So, here we go. First, there's a note in Ananda Wood's writings about the sayings of Swami Atmananda Krishna Menon, and he says, this is in note 39, it says, the poet Tennyson says in his poem Ulysses, pursue knowledge like a sinking star, because the utmost bound, or beyond the utmost bound of human thought. Let me do that again. Pursue knowledge like a sinking star, beyond the utmost bound of human thought. Okay, there's a lot there. But one of Swami Atmananda Krishna Menon's big points is that there is a knowledge beyond what the regular human mind can come to. This isn't woo-woo and it's not weirdness. It's just the fact that there is a knowingness that goes beyond what the rational mind can conceive of. And it is real. Tennyson seems to have to know this. And more about Tennyson here from earlier in the same manuscript And so here is Ananda Wood's words. There is a quotation which Sri Atmananda made from the poet Alfred Tennyson. It concerns the dissolution of personality into, quote, the only true life, unquote. And it is relevant to the question we have been discussing about the dissolution of perceptions, thoughts, and feelings into consciousness itself. Here is the passage quoted. The passage is from a letter by Tennyson to a Mr. R.P. Blood. This passage from the letter from Tennyson to Mr. Blood is quoted in the book Atmananda Tattva Samhita, which transcribes Sri Atmananda's tape recorded talks. So, here are Tennyson's words as quoted by Sri Atmananda. A kind of waking trance I have frequently had, quite up from my boyhood, when I have been all alone. This has generally come upon me by repeating my own name 2 or 3 times to myself, silently, till all at once, as it were out of the intensity of consciousness of individuality, the individuality itself seemed to dissolve and fade away into boundless being. And this, not a confused state, but the clearest of the clearest, the surest of the surest, the weirdest of the weirdest, utterly beyond words, where death was almost a laughable impossibility, the loss of personality, if so it were, seeming no extinction, but the only true life. Wow. Now, Sri Atmananda does go on to point out that this indicates that Tennyson is in a very high place. He's not in the same place as a Buddha or Ramana Maharshi. There is still some sense of individual consciousness there, but it is indeed a wonderful place to be. And again, he talks about the knowingness that is utterly beyond words, and this from a great literateur like Tennyson. And going back to fearlessness from a few weeks ago, he points out that it is a place where death was almost a laughable impossibility. Now, Tennyson is not the only Western writer who is quoted or mentioned by Sri Atmananda. And as background, there is much talking and discussion and belief in the importance of moving from being an active individual into being the witness. A big step in the spiritual path is to become a witness to what is happening rather than an active participant, even while apparently to the world active participating. Yes, that can seem paradoxical. But the witness state is in every belief, somewhere, somehow. Some explicitly stated, sometimes implicitly stated. My friend Bob Nickel had an experience with a technique which brought him to the realization that, and again, he witnessed this, that his whole life he'd been spending 60 to 80% of his energy trying to defend and expand upon and aggrandize the persona that was Bob. And he realized that this persona was a fraud. There was no Bob to have done these things that he remembered, quote, doing, unquote. Now, Bob at that point became much more of a witness to what was happening to him, around him, with him, by him. He saw that the real Bob was the awareness behind the apparent personality, and that awareness became a witness that he was aware of more and more and more. Now, speaking of witnessing, here comes Sri Atmananda again, and this is from Nitya Tripta's Notes on Spiritual Discourses of Sri Atmananda, note 679, as quoted by Ananda Wood. So, Sri Atmananda, Krishna Menon's words. Shakespeare, in his dramas, has created diverse characters of conflicting types, each with a perfection possible to perfection alone. A writer who has no individuality and character of his own can successfully depict only characters of a nature akin to his own. It is only one who stands beyond all characters, or in other words, as witness, that can be capable of such a wonderful performance as Shakespeare has done. Therefore, I say, Shakespeare must have been a Jivan Mukta. In other words, Shakespeare was at a very high spiritual place in order to do in all appearance what Shakespeare in all appearances did with his writings. So a writer who has an individuality and character of his own can successfully depict only characters of a nature akin to his own. It is only one who stands beyond all characters, or in other words, as witness, that can be capable of such a wonderful performance as Shakespeare has done. Now, in the same book, he goes further on to say, every perception, thought, or feeling is known by you. You are the knower of the world through the sense organs, of the sense organs through the genetic mind, and of the mind. Through the generic mind and of the mind, with its activity or passivity by yourself alone. In all these different activities, you stand out as the one knower. Actions, perceptions, thoughts, and feelings all come and go. But knowingness does not part with you, even for a moment. Thoughts, actions, memories, feelings, emotions, they all change. But knowingness, a sense of awareness, that never leaves you. Shakespeare, Tennyson. I believe that every great author at certain times touched into the inner knowingness that all that is all that is, and connected to something beyond the individual self with the small s, the self with the small s being the apparent biological mental being in this body running around the world doing things. In order for great music or great literature or great anything to happen, it's almost necessary to tap into a sense of knowingness beyond the normal. In sports, we talk about playing unconscious. You get into a rhythm, you get into a place where you're playing unconscious and just everything flows naturally. This is what Zen is always looking for. Zen is aimed towards that state being your permanent state because you're attuned not to the mental construct world, but to something bigger and better. And better is a relative term, but bigger and truer because it's permanent. It's not impermanent like anything here in the duality. So, Tennyson, Shakespeare, Zen priests, people in sports, there was a great ballet dancer, one of the male ballet dancers, and this person was famous for saying, I dance best when I'm not here. Now, I forget which dancer, so I'm not using his name, and I'll bring that up later and I'll get it right. But my teacher, Ramesh Balsekar, loved talking about that statement, brought it up again and again. Because again, it's coming to the knowingness and the beingness beyond the individual self, stepping out of the way and just being and doing with what's there, with all that's there. All right. Well, let's end tonight, as we usually do, with the four immeasurables. And the four immeasurables we start with for ourselves. Okay. So, relaxing again, please repeat after me. May I have happiness and the causes of happiness. May I be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May I never be separate from the happiness that is free of sorrow. May I reside in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion. So now let's do the four measurables for we. We can be every being in the universe, people you like, people you don't like, your family, which can be both. Please choose one of them and look him or her in the eye. And let's do the four measurables for we. May we have happiness and the causes of happiness. May we be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May we reside in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion. May we never be separate from the happiness that is free of sorrow. That's the second time I've done that. I switched the third and fourth ones in the order the second time through, and it's not a big deal. The meaning is the same and everything else is the same with it. And plus, I do not wish to break the precepts and kick myself in the butt for making a mistake. I hope all's going well with the precepts for you and with this interesting time in the world. And blessings. Take care.